the chair of the Environmental Protection Committee. I just want to ask that you respect the time that he sets forward. We're going to have timers. We know that for many of you, you could speak intelligently for hours on some of these topics. We know that. Feel free to submit your dissertation for the public hearing comments if you want in writing. If you have all those things, that is welcome to be submitted at Legislature at onondaga.gov. But for this particular moment, this is a chance for you to present live. And so it's going to be, a shortened amount of time. We ask that you respect that amount of time so we can hear from as many people in here because the library closes before we typically close here. So we are going to have to beeline it out of here. So we are needing to hear from as many people as we can live. And then anyone who doesn't have the chance to speak or doesn't have a chance to finish their comments can submit that in email writing. And I would just ask too that as we give these presentations, I want to remind us to not use names. If there are any names that you are saying, it's just please leave those out. You're welcome to mention them to us in confidentiality, but this is a public hearing. And then also just to be respectful of each other. We also want to remind you that the folks who are sitting up here, they cannot respond to you. So you are speaking to them, not to the crowd, and they are not able to respond to you according to the rules of a public hearing. So if you feel weird about that, just know it's the rules and we're just following those rules. And so I encourage you, please be respectful to everyone. We are a community. We all have to live together always. And so we get the chance to hear from one another, to value each other's voices and to value each other's dignity as we go through this process. So thank you for carving time out of your evening to come to bring your voice to this conversation that is extremely important for our community. And with no further ado, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague.
Thank you all for being here tonight. And we can open the public hearing. Can the clerk call the roll?
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Meeker, absent.
Here.
Chairperson. Present one.
In accordance with Resolution 55-2026, which has authorized me and my authority as chair of the Environmental Protection Committee, this public hearing regarding water, wastewater, and our environment in Onondaga County is called to order at 6:03. Was the notice duly published? Okay. Chairwoman Watts covered most of what I would have said to open this up, but I did just want to remind folks here that this meeting is the first step. This is the first part of what I hope will be a public conversation and a multi-step effort to hear from you, the community, regarding important environmental issues and regarding environmental issues that mean a lot to you. It will be followed by future meetings of the Environmental Protection Committee, at which community stakeholders may share more. There are community partners here tonight who are listening. I'm aware of other folks who will be reviewing this hearing, and they will be absorbing, listening. That's what the folks up here are here to do. That's what other community stakeholders are here to do. We're here to listen. We're here to get your concerns, so that those concerns can be understood and hopefully thoughtfully and deliberately responded to. Although again, responses will not be happening tonight from the folks at this table. So I know everybody is eager to share. Let's please again respect the time limit, respect others in the room. Given the volume of people tonight and the desire to hear from as many folks as possible, we're going to set a 4-minute time limit and ask that speakers get ready to go. Written comments will be open until 11:59 tonight. As Chairwoman Watts said, please send written statements to Onondaga County Legislature, that's all one word, at onondaga.gov with the subject line Environmental Protection Special Hearing. And that way, that becomes part of the record. The goal is to help create a public record so that there is a central place where these concerns are brought forward in a centralized and digestible way. But having said all that, our first speaker, and again, 4 minutes per speaker. Our first speaker is Sonia.
Thank you.
Craw. I am a physician with degrees in biology, chemistry, and medicine. I wear many sustainability hats in the community with DeWitt Advisory Conservation Commission, the Syracuse Rose Society managing the beautiful Rose Garden downtown, and with Climate Change Awareness and Action. As a physician, I am used to considering decisions and actions using the principle of do no harm. I'm speaking with you today as the chair of the Micron Monitoring Committee of Sustain CNY. Micron comes to our region with a promise of numerous jobs and 5 county benefits. I've yet to find an environmental benefit to its planter processes. The environmental impact statement and numerous permits review potential impacts in a limited radius of the project and connected actions, and did not address impacts to most of Onondaga County. There is going to be a trickle-down effect on the environment and human health of demolition, construction, and operations. Our committee is asking that Micron and Onondaga County go beyond requirements of federal and state regulations and look to protect our environment and human health. The track record of the semiconductor industry is poor in terms of environmental protection, with numerous hazardous cleanup sites following litigation due to illness caused by pollution. In order to do no harm, we ask that the county, with Micron as financer, throughout the life of the project and for decades beyond, establish a publicly available database of baseline and ongoing monitoring to supplement the minimum required by federal and state regulations. We ask that Micron establish hotlines in connection with all Onondaga County municipalities to quickly identify and address resident and business concerns. We ask that the county expand the work done through its environmental office to include citizen and academic experts who live in our community, and that concerns identified in the environmental impact statement be addressed with further study within Onondaga County if needed. Repeating the EIS and permitting with a non-biased lead agency would be advisable for a project this large with this many environmental concerns. A few examples of why monitoring is needed. The town of Clay has been requested to have a noise variance to permit construction from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Continuous noise affects not only hearing, it affects sleep, concentration, and learning. Noise as a sympathetic stress to the nervous system can contribute to heart disease, anxiety, and depression. We recommend reconsideration of this variance to shorten noise exposure to the community and ongoing continuous and intermittent noise monitoring. How will this construction and wetlands destruction impact residents of Clay and Cicero who rely on wells and sump pumps? Our committee recommends baseline and ongoing monitoring of these and a comprehensive and publicly available geological and groundwater review of any land affected by Micron-connected actions. This is necessary in case of a catastrophic chemical event from Micron's plant and connecting pipelines, as well as to assess unexpected contamination related to construction. Let's move 19 miles from the site to the town of DeWitt. There's an increase in truck traffic at the active quarry at I-481 and the Jamesville exit. I observed 10 or more trucks at any given moment coming in and out of that quarry going to 481 north. Water trucks and street sweepers are unable to keep up with the dust with obliteration of road markings and visible dust in the air. DeWitt is working with the DEC to establish noise and air monitoring of the site, but it's slow going. This air and noise pollution has potential for environmental impact to a large bat hibernaculum, which includes endangered bats located at White Lake adjacent to the quarry. Identifying banding of bats was not done in the fall before they left the Micron region for hibernation. Now their habitat has been demolished. We do not know where endangered and other bats hibernated if they returned to the Micron site, found other sites to roost or perished. Bats eat thousands of insects a night, and a change in their population may increase the likelihood of mosquito-borne illnesses and diseases, which sometimes cause death to animals, including humans. Okay. Page 35 of Micron's 2026 Sustainability Report identifies actions for air emissions, energy, wastewater, and hazardous waste. We recommend the county review Micron's plan and then develop its own sustainability action plan for Micron, outlining what needs to be in place for Micron to receive a green light to begin operations in Clay. In addition, Micron, not Onondaga County, must own the liability for any environmental harm related to its plant construction and operations. The near York State Environmental Amendment to the Constitution, clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment for all demands nothing less.
Please, if you have written statements, you can please provide them up here then so they can be entered into the record. Next speaker, Don Hughes.
Good evening, Don Hughes, my name. I'm one of the leaders of the Sustain CNY Coalition. And I handed out, all the committee members should have one of these. And a bunch of you should have one of these, but I couldn't afford printing 300 of these. So that's what I'm going to be referring to. Note that it says I'm a volunteer. No one's paying me to be here. I wish they would, but Sierra Club is running low. I work with Sierra Club quite a bit. As far as my background, I have a doctorate in chemistry with a focus on environmental chemistry, with a super focus of organic chemicals trace organic chemicals in the environment, such as PFAS. And bachelor's and master's degrees in environmental and chemical engineering of the order. And what I want to talk about today is the chemical aspects of micron. So what we need to realize is making semiconductors requires lots of chemicals, 100 to 200 tons a day, 365 days a year. So just wrap your head around that. The bottom slide on page 1 gives you a list of some of the categories of chemicals that are being used. I'm going to focus just on PFAS, perfluorinated alkyl substances, and PFC, perfluorinated compounds. All right, so fluorine is the theme here. The next, if you flip the page, PFAS chemicals are key to chip making. So the semiconductor industry has made it very clear they must use these chemicals. They've tried to find some alternatives here and there, and they have phased out 2 of them, PFOA and PFOS, PFOA, PFOS. I know the acronyms are terrible, but they have not been able to find viable alternatives to PFAS. So we're in. We're gonna have micron here. We're gonna have PFAS. They gotta use it. Okay, so the question is how to contain it, because these things are quite toxic. So the next slide refers to is a slide of relative PFAS toxicity. So what this is trying to convey is there's a huge range of toxicities of these compounds. On the left axis there, it's logarithmic. Every step up is a factor of 10 higher. And the coloring shows short chain versus long chain. Okay, so that's this thing that looks like that, the bars on vertical bars. And the long chain ones tend to be quite a bit more toxic than the short chain, with some exceptions. But the point of this, if you look at the bottom, it relates toxicity to things that we're more familiar with, like DDT, trichloroethylene, hexavalent chromium. Those are all toxic compounds. Lead, it's not listed, but it's in there. Arsenic. The short chain PCBs have, for the most part, are equally toxic to those. The long chains are 10 to 100 times more toxic. What's all the hullabaloo about with PFAS? Well, if you turn to the next thing, it has a diagram, man, woman, and child. The man looks kind of like a gorilla to me, but yes. Should have a better artist. Anyway, lots of health effects. So there's cancers, there's testicular cancer, there's lung cancer, possibly breast cancer. There's other non-cancer issues, neurological effects. You can read down the list. So there's a lot of toxic effects And what makes them unique is that PFAS is multi-organ. It goes to lots of different parts of your body and causes toxicity. It is transferred across the placenta to the unborn baby. We're at 4 minutes. Okay, well, let's flip to the very end. Okay. The point of this is that, so they use a bunch of compounds, and then in the process, they produce a giant variety of these things. And let's just look at this one graphic that shows targeted versus non-targeted PFAS analysis of wastewater. This is research done at Cornell. It's on page 5. And what they did was they looked at specific PFAS compounds in the regular targeted list. And then they also did some fancy numerical work to figure out other PFAS, which is not on the standard list. And it turns out the other PFAS, the so-called non-targeted PFAS, way exceeded targeted. And the regulators are only looking at targeted compounds. They're ignoring the non-targeted compounds. So the gist of this is the permit. You're going to hear more about the permit. The permit is completely inadequate. And you can read the handout. There's examples at the very end of what Minnesota has done, which is much better than what we got at New York State. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank Micron for their efforts in developing a pipeline of technical employees. They've done some great stuff with our local education system that goes above and beyond the bare minimum and looks to the future. So then why is the environment getting the short end of the stick? I've got a couple of examples I wanted to bring to folks' attention. Be able to review and comment on this massive project. In fact, both of those efforts blew off many of the comments with rationale to the effect, we did everything according to the law and regulations. Well, duh, that's the bare minimum. Anyways, we can and should do better to protect our grandchildren and their grandchildren from potential liabilities and problems down the road from discharges of chemicals that today may not be fully regulated, but ones that are likely to be or could be in the future. Now, Lisa and I have identified a number of risks associated with the Oak Orchard Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant. We provided them to the county's current engineering team. They're also included in the booklet that Todd has or will be distributing to you folks. And I hope you'll review the details. I'm not going to go through the details here. But generally, the risks range from the risk that Micron won't agree to pay for the entire industrial wastewater treatment plant construction, to Superfund liability down the road from discharges to the Oneida River, risks to our water supply from Lake Ontario, and risks from leaking transmission pipelines carrying high volumes of industrial wastewater from Micron under pressure, as well as a number of other risks. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't offer a few examples of where we should go above and beyond the bare minimum on the environment front, which will also help reduce these risks that we've identified. First, I wholeheartedly agree with Lisa that we should be pursuing zero liquid discharge with this plant, with full advanced treatment for all industrial wastewater. If we can't get that advanced treatment ready in time for Fab 1, well, we should install another technology to remove recalcitrant chemicals like PFAS and others that are not effectively treated with the biological treatment before their discharge. I'd like us to develop and implement a robust monitoring program for surface water, for off-site groundwater, for construction-related monitoring for the community, which I understand is underway as we speak, ambient air monitoring. And the important aspect here is we need to get baseline monitoring so we understand conditions today before Micron's operations start up. Greg, I want to thank you for setting up this session. It's a great start, but I'd recommend that we schedule more sessions for the public to weigh in, and let's build in more engagement rather than just an opportunity for us to get up and speak for 4 minutes. We We still have an opportunity to be bold and protect the environment. Let's look to the future and not just today. Let's make Micron development the success it deserves. I'd be happy to share more details on any of these topics, and thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Reminded, please, if you've got written stuff you want to leave with us, please leave it up with the clerk. Next speaker is Joe.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Hayes. I'm General Counsel for the Onondaga Nation. And I want to begin by reflecting on how wonderful it is that we're having a public hearing and that the legislature actually wants to hear from the public. I think it's been 40 years since I've been in a meaningful county legislative hearing. So thank you very much. I also want to thank the scientists who's helped us understand the tremendous environmental dangers that will come out of this pipe from this plant, and particularly the forever chemicals. Hundreds of PFAS are used during the manufacturing process. Half will be secret because the subcontractors claim that they're proprietary. Those are going into the Oneida River. That's what we just heard from the scientists, that the plans do not remove PFAS until it goes into the Oneida River. This is Onondaga territory, the homeland of the Onondaga Nation. And what we're doing here is the same thing that 100 years ago was allowed to happen to Onondaga Lake. We're taking other waters of the Onondaga Nation and polluting them. Because three rivers, Oneida River comes in from the east, the Oneidas used to come by canoe there to Three Rivers, and the Grand Council met at Three Rivers prior to the arrival of the colonists. The Cayugas and the Senecas came from the west. Three Rivers is a very important sacred place to the Haudenosaunee. Look on the Town and Clay website. They reflect the history of Three Rivers. And what we're going to do is we're going to poison it. And we're not going to have the proper treatment for this water. Biological treatment and ultraviolet disinfection do not remove PFAS. So we have to think of the people that use those rivers downstream, but we also have to think of the fish. Because PFAS bioaccumulate in the natural world, very much like mercury. And so the fish will become increasingly inedible there when we've already made them inedible in Onondaga Lake. We should learn from the past mistakes. You cannot clean up chemical pollution of this magnitude after it's done, particularly with PFAS. We know so little about them. There's so little regulation of them. And so kicking 500 dangerous chemicals, many of whom are carcinogenic, down the road is not good leadership. It is not responsible. It jeopardizes public health. We need to learn from the past, and we shouldn't make the same mistakes. The speakers this evening don't want to stop the plant. We want to ensure that it will not poison the people and the natural world. Pretty minimal standards here that are being ignored as these permits go ahead. So we need to hold this company much more responsible and not allow them to dump forever chemicals into our waterway, and to respect the homelands and the sacred places of the Onondaga Nation. Thank you for listening.
Next speaker, Andrew Rose.
Good evening, all. I would like to say thank you to every one of the speakers that have already spoken before me. I heartily endorse everything you said. You guys are all so smart. I'm just a guy that shows up and likes to talk a little bit. And want to say thank you to the county legislature, Nicole Watts, the members here for this public outreach. And actually what Joe Heath said, these are an opportunity for the legislature now to reach out in different ways that haven't been done before. We need to hold folks like Micron to a higher bar. There's a lot of science folks in here that have talked about stuff. A lot of things are being missed. The federal government is trying to make regulations easier for companies. We need to hold the line and create a higher bar, not just for Micron, but all the other follow-on companies that will be coming to this county. This county can hold a higher bar and do better. The science people here have shown that there are some things that have been missed. We have an opportunity here to address those things. We as humans have a right to water and clean water access, and we need to think about that for all the future generations. As the home to the Haudenosaunee, who think forward 7 to 11 generations, we should be thinking that far ahead as well. So I'm just going to keep my comments to that very short because I want to hear what everybody else has to say. Thank you.
Next speaker is Dan Troyan. Thank you. Next speaker is Ray Hollander.
Thank you for holding this public hearing to give us an opportunity to talk. My name is Ray Hollander. I'm a retired professional civil engineer with degrees from bachelor's, master's from Cornell University, quite a ways back. Basically, I spent over 30 years cleaning up hazardous waste sites, Superfund sites, New York State enacted hazardous waste sites, et cetera, all across the country. And one of the key things we want to do is make sure that this project gets done right. It's a very important project, the Micron, and then the growth that can come out of it. And so it should be done, and it needs to be done right. One of the things I'm not sure the Onondaga County Legislature knows is that Onondaga County is actually one of the premier locations in the United States, in fact, in the world, for environmental remediation and environmental protection in general. There's over 1,000 professionals in the county that focus on that every day and have for decades. So a couple of the speakers here, as you notice, have been doing environmental remediation. So there is a huge resource available in this county, available to you if you want to ask for it. It's important to have municipal wastewater plants that are structured to handle industrial waste. So I wholeheartedly support the concept of the Oak Orchard wastewater treatment plant. Most regular POTWs really are not structured to manage industrial waste. And this will be very useful for a lot more than just Micron. All the discussion I've heard to date has been about the New York State discharge permit, the Speedies permit. But there's another really critical aspect to the Oak Orchard plant, and that is control of the influent into the plant. And it is normal for industrial plants, when they go to send their effluent to the plant as influent, to go through a pre-treatment process. So this is something that Onondaga County Department of Environmental Protection has direct control over. It's not a state thing or a federal thing. This is something that the plant itself dictates what that permit will be for the industrial plant. It doesn't come from the state, it comes from Onondaga County. So as legislators, you need to understand that there is something that you have direct control over that's not at the state level. And when I was training staff over the years, one of the key textbooks I used to explain where Superfund sites come from was The Cat in the Hat Comes Back. And in there, you've got the pink cat ring in the bathtub, and it ends up all over the yard by the end of the book, and they need Boone to come in and clean it up. The key lesson out of The Cat in the Hat Comes Back is you don't want to let the pink cat ring out of the bathtub. And so the key thing here is when DEP is running Oak Orchard, they need to have control over what is coming into the plant so that they don't allow all these things to end up going through inadequate processes and escape out into the environment. Thank you.
Next speaker is Tom Fitzsimmons.
Check 1, 2. Former musicians. My name is Todd Fitzsimmons. I'm in the petroleum equipment business. I spent 40 years protecting our groundwater, selling leak detection systems. PFAS is so toxic to human health that the EPA determined there is no safe level. The federal maximum contaminant level for drinking water was set at 4 parts per trillion. Not because it is safe, but because it is a level that can be measured and enforced. 1 part per trillion is 1 second, 32,000 years. For a single drop of water in 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And PFAS is like glitter. It never goes away. It just accumulates day after day, year after year. In fact, it's accumulating in our blood. Most every person in this room likely has PFAS in their blood right now. PFAS has been linked to. Sure, sorry. It's also, PFAS also been found to be a pain in the ass if you're in the semiconductor manufacturing business. The semiconductor industry depends on PFAS. Its manufacturing process and has for decades. It can't exist without it. Back when the EPA was doing its job and noticed that a lot of people downstream from DuPont, 3M were dying, they started regulating them. The market found a way around those regulations. The fine folks at DuPont introduced a new PFAS called Gen X, unregulated, according to them, also safe. About the time that Bell and Cass registered quit rating, Gen X was also discovered to be just as toxic. So the EPA regulated it too. Thank God we had the EPA trying to protect us. But the semiconductor industry didn't pack up shop and go home. They just started using other kinds of PFAS that were unregulated. And this cycle has been repeating ever since. Right now, there are 40 types of PFAS that are regulated. The semiconductor industry is using hundreds of others that aren't. All of them are toxic. Their business model is to stay 1 molecule ahead of the regulations. It's not their responsibility to protect human health, only to follow the law and the lawmakers. In fact, Micron has promised to limit its discharge to the limits in the speedies permit. That sounds great until you realize there are no limits in the speedies permit. The semiconductor industry spent $19 million on lobbying during the last presidential race. Last year, the EPA was in the process of introducing new regulations that would finally address industrial discharge when the new administration on day 1 canceled it. The CHIPS Act included millions of dollars for a program called PFAS Reduction Innovation Semiconductor Manufacturing to find a way to balance the needs of chip fabs against human health. That funding was eliminated by Commerce Secretary who was quoted as saying at the groundbreaking just up the road, this groundbreaking only got scheduled at the end of December because the Trump administration figured out all the environmental and other things that tend to get in the way. trying to roll back PFAS regulations we already have for drinking water. Protecting human health is not as important as economic development. Well, thank God we have the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation with a $3.6 billion annual budget to protect polluters. But after 40 years watching this agency in action, I can tell you from my own personal experience, that is not close to what they do. I would need hours to tell you stories about an agency that's extremely good at appearing to protect human health, while it is actually usually protecting the interest of industry. I watched the direct polluters put their pollution in the air and spill the water because you can't measure it. I watched the local director get promoted after I showed his boss proof that he had a free hunting camp built by the very contractors he was favoring on cleanup projects. One last thing here. That is when I got involved in this project. The other reason, but last year I watched my mother die of very painful slow death from cancer. Beautiful, strong woman. Spent the last month of her life begging for people offended. My daughters have their brains and her beautiful eyes. So I only got 5 minutes. I'd like you. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you for today's forum. She comes up, I lost the link to it. This is a petition from the website Forever Chemicals CNI. There's over 2,000 petitioners signed, and all their names are on there.
Thank you, Todd. Next speaker is Christina Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, members of the Environmental Protection Committee. My name is Christina Fitzsimmons. I'm a recruiter and an engineering and power generation and a resident of the Syracuse area. I'm here to speak about the serious PFAS concerns with the Micron semiconductor project in Clay and the risks wastewater poses to our local waterways and drinking water supply. I want to talk about the plant being built at Oak Orchard to treat Micron's wastewater and where that water goes. At full build-out, it will discharge up to 33.5 million gallons a day, 12 billion gallons a year of PFAS-laden water into the Onondaga River that flows to Lake Ontario, right past the drinking water intake for 500,000 of us, and on down to St. Lawrence, where 3 million more people drink, through the Thousand Islands, where my family has lived for over 200 years, and which Native people revered to as the Garden of the Great Spirit for 1,000 years before that. My great-grandfather, Lowell Fitzsimmons, who I named my son after, chaired the Hudson and Black River regulating boards. He spent his life balancing human health against economic development. It is hard, honest work. Exactly the work that DEC is supposed to do. Under its charter and on a budget of $3.6 billion a year, the DEC is required, and I am quoting the law, to conserve, improve, and protect its natural resources and environment, and to prevent, abate, and control water, land, and air pollution in order to enhance the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the state. But the DEC is run by political appointees under real pressure to expedite permits, so development can move. And this is unquestionably the largest economic development project in the country's history. This is huge. Here is what that pressure produced. Last month in your own meeting, Regional Director Dareth Lance was asked directly, does Micron's permit contain enforceable PFAS limits? She said yes, but Director Glantz is unfortunately not a chemist or an environmental scientist. Her degree was in political theory, and she was wrong. And in a follow-up letter, in your handout, she admitted it does not. It does not contain enforceable PFAS limits. What they do have is, it's called an enforceable action level. It gives them a lot of wiggle room. That's smoke and mirrors. An action level is not a limit. This one covers just 2 of the hundreds of PFAS compounds Micron uses, and sets enforceable limits for none of them. Yes, sir. A exceed it, and all it triggers is more testing and a minimization program. And once that starts, even the testing can go away. The only testing actually required is 4 samples a year, 4 jars, on a pipe carrying 12 billion gallons, with a method that misses over 90% of what is actually in the water. Look at Seneca Meadows, the largest landfill in the state. It had leachate near 13,000 parts per trillion of PFAS, over 3,000 times the drinking water limit. It had an action level and no enforceable limit. So today they truck 40 million gallons of it a year to a Buffalo sewage plant, Bird Island, and never designed to remove PFAS. And it discharges straight into the Niagara River and Ontario, Lake Ontario. The discharge never stopped, it just moved. Action levels do not stop toxic discharges, enforceable limits do. And this same permit proves the DEC knows how. For example, mercury, they wrote hard enforceable limit. For PFAS, they chose not to, yet. Thank you. I do urge you to take strong action to protect your community's water resources and public health. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Riley Fitzsimmons.
Good evening. My name is Riley Fitzsimmons, and I'm a student in Manlius, and I'm here for a simple reason. I don't want another kid to have to watch their grandmother die the way I watched mine. A slow, painful death from cancer. My sister showed you what this permit does, and I want to show you that it does not have to be this way, because other places facing the same company and the same chemicals made a different choice. Starting with Boise, Micron has run its plant there for decades. PFAS has turned up in the Boise River downstream, but not because nobody ever set a limit and nobody ever took a baseline sample first. The source is disputed, and so nobody is responsible for anything. That is not a mystery. That is simply what happens when all you do is monitor. And it is the exact future that this permit is building for us. Now look at Virginia. Last year, after discovering contamination of their drinking water, they passed House Bill 2050. Occoquan Reservoir PFAS Reduction Program. A Democrat wrote it, and a Republican governor signed it. It requires the semiconductor plants discharging it into the reservoir, and Micron's own Manass fab is one of them. To bring their PFAS down to the federal drinking water limit, it has teeth, and if they go over, the state has to tighten the permit. Same company, same forever chemicals. 2 million Virginians got an enforceable limit because their leaders in both parties required it. The difference between Virginia and us is not the science, it is leadership. And the technology to do even better already exists. It is called zero liquid discharge. Instead of treating wastewater and releasing it into a river, a chip fab plant recovers and reuses almost all of its water and sends virtually nothing out. Semiconductor makers elsewhere are already moving toward it. Yes, it costs more, but it means PFAS never reaches the Oneida River, never reaches Lake Ontario, and never reaches the Thousand Islands, and never reaches our tap. That is what real protection looks like, not 4 jars a year. I want to say something directly to this committee, because I think that what has been put on you is not fair. Protecting our drinking water from these chemicals was supposed to be the job of the EPA and the DEC. That is what they're funded to do. But the first federal rule ever written to control PFAS from plants like this was withdrawn by the current administration. The EPA has also pushed down its deadlines out and moved to repeal others. And our own DEC just wrote monitor and walked away. When every agency above you steps back, the responsibility does not disappear. It lands right here on this committee. That is not fair to you, but it is real. Tonight, you are the only ones standing between that pipe and the people downstream. And here's the part that should give you hope. You still can stand there. The contract is not signed. The design is barely a third finished. The bond is not authorized. Everything my sister asked for can still go into this plant if you act before the window closes. I'm 16 years old. The people who will be drinking this water long after everyone in this room is gone are my generation, and one day our children and our grandchildren. You have a chance tonight that Boise never got, to draw the line before the pipe is even built. It is my generation's future that you are deciding today. I start by telling you about my grandmother. Let me end there too. I don't want my children and my grandchildren or the millions of people downstream to ever have to do what I did. Sit beside someone they love and watch her die a slow, painful death from cancer. Tonight, you can help us make sure they never have to.
Next speaker is Sue Hammond. Sue? Oh, sorry, that wasn't true. I may have been butchering your last name. You're on.
I don't know what I can do to follow up on that one. That was amazing. But basically, maybe just to summarize a little bit, I'm a retired physician. Okay? And we took it out to first do no harm. The precautionary principle. Okay? And all this talk about remediation, why are we talking about remediation? Okay? Why put in there something that has to be remediated? Just don't put it in there in the first place, for Pete's sake. Okay? And everybody, I guess most people here want this Micron plant. They just don't want all the crap that goes along with it. Well, frankly, I'm sorry, but I don't want it. Because of all the things that have done here. It is going to dump all this stuff in the air, okay, and in the water. And they've already, listen, any project that starts out with taking a 96-year-old grandmother off her land and cutting down 400 acres of trees does not bode well for this community. We don't know what chemicals, they've already said trade secrets. We don't know what chemicals are going in there. There's a ton of them, and literally a ton of them, okay? And so if we don't know what's going in, we don't know what's coming out. And if we don't know what's coming out, how do we know what's going into the wastewater treatment plant? And if they don't know what's coming into the wastewater treatment plant, how are they going to know what to treat? Okay, and is it going to be treated? And how do we know what's coming out? I mean, the previous speakers have already done this very well. We know what's going to be coming out, a lot of carcinogen. Okay, so why are we worried about how to treat them? Just don't put them in there in the first place. And if Micron needs all of this stuff, say, take a hike, Micron. I know we want this committee to turn on all these.
Attention library visitors, the time is now 7 p.m. Today the library closes at 10:25 p.m. and the upper floors will close in 15 minutes. Thank you and enjoy your evening.
Gotta check out. So seriously, the other thing is AI. Well, what is he making these chips for? The Micron folks said a while ago, okay, they're getting out of the consumer chip industry. All of their chips are going to be made for data centers, for AI, okay, for advancing AI. So that's what it's for. So don't worry about wow, what am I going to do with my iPhone? Well, so they're made for data centers, okay, and that's the next thing. The next thing coming up is, and people already want to do data centers. Thank God, at least the governor said, no, not for another year, okay? But this plant, and why have data centers been halted? Okay, why have they? Because of the water that's being used, the electricity that's being used, the land that's being destroyed, the air that's being polluted, all of those things. Guess what? This chip plant is just as bad as any data center. And I'm sorry that they didn't put a halt on these a little while ago. Got in a little too soon, got a little bit too late. So, I mean, as I said, I know I'm a Debbie Downer, and I know there's people who have all the jobs that are being, okay, first of all, construction jobs. Okay, well, as I pointed out a few months ago, in the beginning, the construction jobs are going to be destruction jobs. Okay, destroying a lot of land, a lot of water. Have you seen what's going to? They've already cut down all the trees. They're digging up all the land. They're going to remove those wetlands, and they're going to give us some new wetlands, just as good as the old ones. maybe that's what I'm trying to say. All of these people are giving you wonderful reasons for saying no. Just say no. I hate to call it Nancy Reagan, but sometimes you just have to just say no.
Next speaker is Liza Bernard.
Hi, my name is Liza. I want to express my deep rage at Micron, and also many of our leaders who have allowed us to come to this place where we are trying to stop millions of gallons of wastewater that's polluted with heavy metals, forever chemicals, into getting fed into the Onondaga River, which leads to Lake Ontario, which is the drinking water for millions and millions of people. I think what the company is doing to us here is a hostile act. And I think it's wrong. They know better. They're well-educated people running that corporation. The people who, gave them the green light, they also knew better. So shame on them. Shame on all those people. I'm really mad at Micron, and even though we need the jobs, it's not a good sacrifice to make. It's not worth it. Thanks.
Next speaker is Lisa Warren.
First of all, thank you to the legislature for having this, the committee for having a public hearing. I'm so impressed with all of the speakers here. So, I don't want to be like John and have talking that there's an optimal level for these mics. As we all know. Anyway, first of all, I just want to say that the environment is increasingly important regardless of Micron for the county. The county is, as an outsider looking at the county, has had basically a kind of a laissez-faire approach to the environment. It formerly had an environmental management council. It abolished it. It got rid of the office. It has some offices related to the environment now. But has the county really done its due diligence is an overarching issue here regarding Micron, regarding that big Amazon fact up in Liverpool, which is like shocking to see how large it is, the impacts of all of these developments. It's really time for leadership. So thank you for making this first step. There are many more to go. So what I wanted to talk about was what I heard and what I've read, and I urge everyone to read the Sunday paper and this wonderful editorial written by several of the speakers that have already spoken. I think they really pointed it out very carefully, some very important points. One is the county's consultant, Brown and Caldwell, completed a conceptual design report in 2025 recommending biological treatment and UV technology that do not remove PFAS. Where was the concern of county officials when they read that? That and the fact that this is a design, build, operate, bid process. I agree full-heartedly what it says here in the first paragraph. My experience as a former local government and state government official outside of New York is absolutely, you will not have the review capability that this public deserves with a design build approach. That is not appropriate here. Why is it, for example, that Micron and Boise has learned from the past experiences that have been discussed here about the Boise River, and one of the concluding paragraphs of this article is, for example, Micron is building a zero liquid discharge treatment plant, as described by Don Hughes, and for the new plant that they are building. They learned from experience. Why hasn't Micron learned from that experience and applying it here? Why has it had to get to this point? That it is clear that this serves as written right here. This serves as a good role model for Central New York. Zero liquid discharge means that little or no PFAS would be released into the Onondaga River and Lake Ontario. That That's a given, from what I can tell. Now, two things that make sense from here is where to go from here is there needs to be, in my view, there needs to be an institutionalized process that the county comes up with for continued engagement of these wonderful volunteers that have spent hundreds of hours reviewing documents to provide input to you. You know this has been going on, and certainly you could see it in spades here tonight. They have spent hundreds of hours reviewing documents. It's a thankless job, and I'm only here because I believe in what they have done. It's time to follow that and figure out a way to get that input on a regular basis to the county. It's time to be proactive. It's not over yet. There's things that can be done. And secondly, John Pertzapora, who's a former city engineer, he gave you some very specific suggestions about what needs to be done to get staffed up to be able to deal with this. This is ridiculous. They eliminated the Environmental Management Council. Why, all the other counties around us have those councils. It's time to, get together, and it's in state statute, just set it up and let's get it going. And also, number two, have a staff like John described. He's sitting in the front row here. He had some very good suggestions. I hope you gave them in writing, because there needs to be a staffing. He understands more than I do about being able to have competent staff and funding allocated. That's the role the legislature is funding. It's time. It's time to put this together and be able to deal with this. And I apologize, I didn't have written remarks and I didn't prepare my comments till I got here. But I do definitely believe and endorse what's been stated. And I hope that you can meet with John and he can describe exactly what he means in terms of getting those job descriptions written, and not with outside consultants. They need in-house capacity, professional capacity to help serve the public.
Next speaker.
My name is Pete Worth. I'm Vice President of Climate Change Awareness and Action, a local organization representing 1,400 members. A few years ago, Micron organized 2 face-to-face meetings in Onondaga County with environmental organizations asking for our input. I had the opportunity to meet Micron's Vice President of their Sustainability Division. Initially, we were told that like their manufacturing plant in Singapore, where there are 36,000 solar panels installed across the rooftop of that plant, rooftop solar would be installed at the clay plant. This was the first of a number of promises that disappeared as time went on. There will be no rooftop solar on the clay plant versus 36,000 solar panels on the plant in Singapore. At the same time, we were told by the county exec and the president of Micron that the massive electrical needs of Micron, 2 states worth, would be met by 100% renewable energy. I'll repeat that, 100% renewable energy for electricity. This was then repeated by every politician on the state and federal level and every economic development committee in Onondaga County. Renewable energy, as defined by the CLCPA, New York State legislation, is wind, solar, and hydro. After about 2 years, that promise also disappeared, as there was a shift to the term clean energy, which includes nuclear. Nuclear is carbon-free, which is positive in regard to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It is also the most expensive way to produce electricity and prone to cost overruns for construction. The last nuclear power plant came online in Georgia, 2023, beginning of 2024, and ballooned in cost from an estimated $14 billion to $36.8 billion, and was 7 years behind the original construction date. Ratepayers often end up subsidizing the cost of these plants, as we are doing today in upstate New York. Essentially, with the billions of tax dollars that Micron is getting, we are being asked to subsidize our own rate increases. To add insult to injury, the proposed water treatment plant for Micron will require the removal of the existing 9,400 solar panels from the county Oak Orchard Solar Farm. If I told you 10 years ago that one day, not so distant future, we would wake up the skies that were ashen because of fires thousands of miles away and air quality so bad that you should put on a face mask before venturing out, you would have looked at me as if I was a nut truck. However, this is our reality today. Due to the hundreds of fires burning in the Canadian boreal forests, and will only get worse unless we slow down greenhouse gas emissions. The numbers are so large, 10.5 million metric tons of greenhouse gases emitted annually by Micron. They become meaningless after a while. I'm here today to ask you to request that Micron fulfill its promise and give us a plan where the renewable energy, wind, solar, and hydro will come from. No funny accounting games, just where will the renewable energy come from? I'm here today to ask you to enforce what Micron and our county executive.
Attention library visitors, the time is now 7:15 p.m. and the upper floors are now closed. Please make your way to the first floor to complete any remaining business. Thank you and enjoy your evening.
I'm here today to ask you to enforce what Micron and our county executive told us from day one. 100% renewable energy for electricity. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Katie Mulligan.
Hello? Can you guys hear me? Okay, I'll make this quick so we can get out of the library here. So my name is Katie Mulligan. I am the current Syracuse organizer with Jobs to Move America. And I am also a near lifelong resident. I live about 10 minutes from the site. My mother also lives about 10 minutes from the site. And I am here today on behalf of the CNY United for Community Benefits Coalition. A lot of folks that have spoken are a part of this coalition. It is made up of about 20 social justice, civil rights, environmental, worker, and community organizations. The coalition's mission is to win a legally enforceable community benefits agreement with Micron. I am here because we want the Micron project to be the best possible project for Central New York. I want it to maximize and equitably distribute the economic and job benefits, and I want it to minimize the potential harms to our health, communities, and our environment. As I'm sure a lot of you know, Micron's valuation as a company has exceeded $1 trillion, and their profits in the last quarter alone topped $24 billion. They stand to receive upwards of $20 billion in public subsidies for their project in Central New York. The cost of the commitments that we are all asking for are truly pennies on the dollar for Micron. Given how much Onondaga County is subsidizing and facilitating this project, we believe that the county can and should play an active role in creating a win-win-win for Micron, the county, and the people of Onondaga County. As a resident first, I am deeply concerned about a range of potentially negative environmental and health impacts of this project, from the chemical use mentioned tonight to energy, to the destruction of many valuable types of wetlands, and the risk of flooding resulting from the loss of these wetlands. I am also concerned about the mitigation of species loss at this site and effectively mitigating the overall environmental damage caused by the development. As you all know, OSIDA was the lead agency on the environmental review for this project. Last year, they rejected an appeal supported by over 1,600 petition signers asking to give more time to review the 20,000-page environmental review document. Over 1,200 people submitted public comments, myself included, regarding wetlands during the comment period, with raising extensive and unaddressed concerns about both the negative environmental and social impacts and the lack of enforceable agreements relating to the promised economic benefits. Our coalition members have engaged with some members of the county legislature over our concerns about the transport, use, and disposal of forever chemicals at the Micron facility. I sincerely appreciate the commitment to holding this public hearing. As you know, I also want to address that there is substantial risk to thousands of future Micron workers in the absence of robust on-site protections and enormous risks, as folks have mentioned here tonight, of the contamination of waterways and sources of drinking water for this entire region. We want full disclosure of chemicals, strict oversight, and most importantly, a plan to destroy PFAS on site at Micron rather than the county bearing the responsibility. I am very concerned about the enormous energy use by the project, the contribution to global warming that it will have, and the potential to drive up already high prices in energy for the people of this region, myself included. Micron's plans outlined in their environmental analysis are, in my opinion, grossly inadequate. I encourage you tonight to take any action available to you as a body and/or as individuals to urge Micron to come to the table and negotiate a meaningful and enforceable agreement. We welcome an ongoing dialogue and partnership with you about these issues. And some of you folks may have gotten a handout. So Jobs to Move America and Urban Jobs Task Force, which is a local organization here, commissioned Data for Progress to conduct a survey of folks in Onondaga County. There were hundreds of folks that were asking questions about how they feel about Micron. The resounding answer is that over 80% of residents truly feel that they want enforceable agreements from Micron and they want more accountability. This is bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats, everyone responded in this fashion. And I think that it's important that we listen to voters here in Onondaga County. So thank you, folks.
Next speaker is Dina Politis.
Good evening. I actually live in Oswego County, across the street from the Oswego River. My mother has a camp on the Oneida River. My nieces and nephews swim in that river. I get my drinking water, which is practically perfect, from an aquifer that will be affected by any pollution of the waterways and groundwater from Micron. But I am speaking tonight on behalf of a friend of mine who lives about 2 miles away from Oak Orchard in Onondaga County. She was not able to come. She wrote a letter, and I would like to read that. She says, "My name is Jean Marie Gildemeyer Russo. I am speaking tonight as a concerned citizen regarding the proposed expansion of the Oak Orchard wastewater treatment plant and the environmental review conducted under SECRA for the Micron project." I hope I'm saying SECRA right, I'm not sure. My concern is that the wastewater conveyance line, which is an essential component of the Micron project and necessary to transport industrial wastewater to Oak Orchard, did not receive the same comprehensive level of environmental review as the Micron campus itself. This is not a minor utility connection. It is a major wastewater conveyance system owned by Micron that extends for miles between the Micron campus and the Oak Orchard wastewater treatment plant, crossing numerous private properties via easements, I'll add that they were bullied into, through wetlands, streams, and other environmental sensitive areas. Because this infrastructure is fundamental to the operation of the project, it should have been evaluated with the same level of scrutiny as the manufacturing campus. Instead, the wastewater conveyance corridor appears to have been left out of the EIS. She's being very considerate in her speech because she did a lot of research and it is actually missing. She read the entire review. And it's classified as a connected action rather than part of the overall project. As a result, important questions remain about whether reasonable alternative routes were fully considered, whether cumulative impacts along the entire corridor for each easement were adequately evaluated, and whether site-specific impacts to wetlands, waterways, wildlife habitat, and neighboring properties received the detailed analysis that SECRA is intended to provide. SECRA exists to ensure that environmental impacts are thoroughly identified, disclosed, and evaluated before public decisions are made. For infrastructure of this scale, the public deserves confidence that every essential component of the project has received a complete and transparent environmental review. As the county considers investing hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to expand the Oak Orchard wastewater treatment plant in support of the Micron project, I respectfully ask that it first determine whether the environmental review of the Micron-owned wastewater conveyance system fully satisfies the requirements of SECRA. If significant portions of the critical infrastructure were not comprehensively evaluated, then the county should seriously consider preparing a supplemental environmental impact
Attention
statement.
library visitors, the time is now 7:25 p.m. and the central library is now closed. Please exit on the first floor. Thank you and enjoy your evening.
Then the county should seriously consider preparing a supplemental environmental impact statement before moving forward with additional approvals and expenditures. Thank you for your time and consideration.
As you heard, the library is about to close. We have time for one more speaker tonight. There are a couple of folks who are here who I'm going to ask to meet with me personally, find it so that we can find a time to speak. The next speaker is Aggie Lane.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm a member of Urban Jobs Task Force and we are part of the coalition. But I just want to make a very brief comment. Years ago, I worked with Joe Heath on the pollution of Onondaga Lake. And I was part of an organization called the Partnership for Onondaga Creek. And we were trying to stop these sort of what I would call rainy day sewage plants being dotted all over the city using chlorination. And, you know, they just started building the one. I live on the south side, one on Midland Ave. And when the power changed in the county, we got a new county exec. All of a sudden, the possibilities happened. And they stopped all those rainy day sewage plants with chlorine and putting underground storage. So this is about political power. And I'm hoping that somehow there's enough power to get the right things done.
Thank you. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. I wanted to speak. Let me speak. I've been purposely overlooked for many years. I've been out here. Now it's time that I speak. I carry the allodial title to this land, and I don't agree. No free or prior consent with this Micron. It's damaging our environment, our people. I am the matriarch of Onondaga. I'm sorry I'm the matriarch of Onondaga. I've been purposely overlooked. Like I said, I carry the allodial title to this land. Now, the people are the power. See, there's a lot of corruption going on. That's why they hurry up and they did it. You know,
They weren't even supposed to. So there's a lot of corruption. They think they can get away with it, but the people are the power. You guys stand by me, we can make this happen. We can shut them right down. Yeah, we don't need this. Our next generations, we have to look out for, this is crazy. This is really, we're at the peak of all this corruption. You see your guys' commander-in-chief, he's a head up, I'm not even gonna go in there. But I just wanted to say no to these surveillance centers, AKA data centers, no to them. So I'm here. I deal with active genocide. I've been contaminated with water since I was a child, my first 4 years at Camp Legion military base. So I got those enzymes in me. And my mother only lived to be 61, okay, because of that contamination. So I know all about water, how important our water is. My grandmother got me from that Camp Legion when I was 4 years old and brought me to the reservation and raised me. My duties were getting pails of water. We were the last generations to have running water out to the reservation. Yes, so I know all about the corruption and those people who run Onondaga Nation today, Onondaga Nation Incorporated. You understand? They live on 4 Tennessee Trans gas pipelines today. Yes, they're not even real original Onondagas. Yeah, I'm one of those bridge one, and I come from the sense of the bridge. Yes, I'm deeply rooted here. Yeah, so I'm the steward of the land. If you guys want to get in contact with me, you can see me at the door, okay? Thank you. You're my home.
I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I think there's one speaker we were not able to get to, that's Peter King. Peter, if you're here, I will ask you to meet me so that we can find a time to connect. And Mr. King, if you have a written statement, please bring it up here for the clerk. They got to close. I'm sorry, we're trying to close the library. I do want to thank the speakers for coming out here tonight. A lot of the community partners, many of them were here for listening. To thank everyone on this panel for being here, and all the legislators on this committee for being here tonight, and to the county leg staff for supporting this and for facilitating this meeting. Thank you everyone for being here, for holding us accountable, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. We do need a motion to close. Actually, we're going to close the public hearing at 11:59 tonight. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. We need a motion to do that in a second. We have a second. A second. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor of closing? The public hearing is adjourned at 7:32 p.m. If anyone has written statements, please submit them by 11:59 p.m.
We're going off the bat.
To Onondaga County Legislature and Onondaga.gov.
Thank you very much, Chair Erickson. As the library has been closed, if you could please exit by the doors to the back right of the room.